All right, hello and welcome to another Microvellum-LIVE event. We are certainly glad you're here with us today. These live events are hosted weekly for your benefit, whether you're already a Microvellum user or just looking to learn a bit more about our software. Either way, we are here to educate you on all things Microvellum. So if this is the first time you've participated with our live events, I want to take a few moments to explain how today's session is going to work. As you have already noticed, we're using GoToWebinar as our streaming platform, and this is the palette that you see docked there on the right side of your monitor, most likely. And that's your line of communication to our team. So take a note of that questions box there, the panel, or in that panel, and that's where you will communicate with our team. So on deck at the help desk today, we have Shane Governor, Doug Morris. We're looking forward to helping you, so don't be shy about asking your questions. And in case you're wondering, this webinar is being recorded and a link will be emailed to you tomorrow. All right, with that introduction out of the way, let's get right into what we will be talking about today. So we're going to be focusing on an intermediate level topic related to reports with Microvellum. Our reporting engine is very powerful, and understanding how to use it can make your job easier. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be focusing on using expressions, brushes, and styles. And here once again to help us with today's lesson is Lucas Marquez. Lucas, thanks for joining us today.
All righty. Yeah, so as Clay was saying, mentioning here, we're going to be talking about a few core concepts as far as it comes to Report Designer. And the core concepts we're going to be talking about here are expressions. Expressions are needed for reporting purposes. Without being able to write expressions, you won't really be able to develop a report. Along with that, we're also going to be talking about one of the, the core bands that's included on a report, and that's a data band. And just like expressions, data bands are a core object that without a data band, you're also going to have a very difficult time being able to configure a report here. So just to set up the environment a little bit here, I'm running in Toolbox OEM 2018 on our 15.5 build. And so we'll just jump right into it here. Last week we talked about a little bit of UI familiarization, how to access the report designer, the different types of report categories that are available. Today we're going to be looking at a manufacturing report. We're just going to create a very simple list report here of our products table. And this is really just to kind of show you how you can start using expressions and how the data band works in relation to a table. So from this screen here, we have a couple different options. We have the new report from existing, new report, or an open report. So as we talked about last week, depending on the type of report you're going to be doing, if it's a brand new report, you might do a new report from existing or just a brand new report. On this one, we're going to do a new report because I know I don't have any existing reports. They're going to have the structure that I want. We're just going to start from scratch here. I'm going to give my report a name here. So we'll just call this a product report. And I'm going to start selecting the different tables for my database types that I want to be able to display on this report. So I'm going to start with, we're going to make a work order because it's a manufacturing report. So whenever we select the work order selection screen here, sorry, it opened up on my other screen. Let me pull that over. I'm running a couple screens here and it opened up on the wrong one. All right. So when we select the Microvellum work order database, it's going to ask us to select a work order that we have created. And that way you can just load some data and we know exactly what we're loading into it. So I'm just going to select one of my work orders that I have there and it'll load the tables for that. Since today we're just going to make a product report, I'm going to select my products table. As you can see in here, all of our tables are named pretty intuitively as far as the data that they hold. So if you wanted to bring in part information, we'd select the parts table. If you want to bring in information about our sheets, we might be selecting either the place sheets table or just a normal sheets table. For this one, we're just going to bring in the products table and we're going to start with that one here. If we wanted this to be a batch report, as far as we only want to display information for a certain batch that was processed, we can select the Is Batch Report button here at the bottom, and that'll prompt us by selecting the batch whenever we're previewing the report in the processing center. So I'm going to leave that unchecked today. We'll just hit OK here. And what that'll do is that'll go through and it'll create the preliminary report with the different data set in there that holds the products table. So I'm going to go open my report and I'm going to select the report that I just created, which is the product report. And when we hit OK there, that'll load up the report. We're going to see that when the report loads, it's just going to be a blank report, an empty report, because we haven't done any configuration or anything on this report just yet. So we'll hit the designer button. If we needed to modify the tables, make some more enables, we can hit the edit data source. That's just going to give us the same screen where we can reselect tables. For now, I'm just going to hit the designer button because I don't need to add any new tables, and that's going to launch the Microvellum report designer. So as I talked about last week, there was a few, or 2 weeks ago, there was a few different familiarization things that we talked about. And I'll just review a couple of those here very briefly. They're ones we're going to be using. Today we're going to be looking at the properties. We're going to be playing with a couple different properties such as the border and the brush. We're also going to be looking at our style designer, which the style designer is going to hold a couple different styles that we can use throughout the report. And we're also going to be using our dictionary, which our dictionary is what holds all of our values, such as maybe system variables, custom variables, and our data set, which contains our products table. And our products table contains all the row information about our products. If you wanted to just get an overview to view the data of what's in our products, we could right-click on products table and view data. And we're going to see in here that I have 6 different products in here currently. We can see all the different information that's available to us, such as the link IDs, maybe the name of there. There's also the width, height, and depth, and different information there. The link IDs are used to link 2 separate tables together. So I could see that my products, I could link them to a project. I could link them to the location they belong to. I could even link it to the library that it came from if I wanted to do so. And we'll be talking about link IDs and creating table relationships in a future live event. Today we're specifically going to be talking about data bands and expressions. That way we get those core concepts really ingrained. So when we go through and we start creating master detail reports using relationships, we have those core concepts already in. So there's a few different types of expressions that you can use on reports. Some of them are very basic expressions, such as text expressions. An expression is going to be placed inside of a component. So over here on the left-hand side, we have our toolbar where we can access all of our different components. The components that we're going to be looking at specifically is just a regular text component. Text component is where you can write all your expressions that'll display certain information. You can make those as big or as wide as you want to. I'm just going to make mine maybe about half the page for now. Give me a little bit room to write. Whenever we place that text expression on there, we're going to be greeted with the text editor. One of the things you'll notice here on the text editor is we have access to the dictionary. This is the same dictionary here that's available just at the main screen as well. And this just makes it easy for you to drag and drop different information that you might be wanting to use in an expression or to display on your text component there. The first expressions we're going to cover here are just going to be regular text expressions, so we're not going to be using the data source here at all. And a text expression is just straightforward. You just write whatever text it is that you want in here. So we could write, for example, my text. And if we hit OK there, oh, I'm using the wrong font here, so let me come up here and change my font to something else. Let's go with Georgia. And when we preview the report, which is that simple text expression, we get exactly what's there. We get the text, just my text. Along with that, you can also use numerics in there. So if we want to hit enter to do maybe a multi-line expression, we could enter and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's just going to give us a general numeric expression there. And you can see how it's pretty easy to create just a normal string text expression that's a multi-line expression. So that's just a very basic expression. More things that you can do in expressions here are perhaps calculating values. So instead of doing a text expression, here I'm just going to draw another component on here. Maybe we want to do an expression that calculates values in there. So we can mix in a text expression with a value expression. So we can do something like our value is equal to some numbers here. So, you know, in math, we could do a number, let's say we'll do 1 plus 2. Oop. 1 plus 2. Now, if I leave that expression there, you know, we know if we calculate this out that our value is going to display 3 there. So let's preview this and let's see exactly what we get. we'll see there that we still get a text expression. So it's not actually calculating any values in there. So, and that's because we're missing a couple key components in that expression that are needed to tell the report designer that we are wanting to evaluate something versus just displaying its string value or its literal value. And to do that, we use the curly brackets. So the curly brackets, they're right next to the P on your keyboard if you're using the standard QWERTY keyboard. And you can access those just by hitting the shift and then the button there. So a beginning curly bracket signifies the beginning of an expression. The closing curly bracket signifies the closing of an expression. So if I did an expression like this, what we're going to get is we're going to get something very similar to what we got the first time. We're just going to get a value of equal to 1 plus 2. And that's because our expression that our expression of values here we're saying is just 1, so it's just returning the same 1 value. So if we wanted to calculate 1 plus 2, we'd have to encapsulate the entire expression in those curly brackets. Another neat little trick down here is this little check button. The check button will quickly check your expression just to make sure you have no errors in there. It helps save some time. If there is an error, it usually will come up and tell you, hey, there's some kind of error. Like, for example, if I leave off a curly bracket, it's okay, but it shouldn't be. Interesting. But yeah, so that'll usually give you some errors. I tend to check it almost every time just so that way I know that my expression's good there and I don't have to worry about checking it later on down the line. So now if we have our 1 plus 2 inside of the curly brackets and we preview this report, we're going to get our value is equal to 3. So in that same manner, you can have multiple value expressions in one in one text component. So we could say maybe value A is equal to 1 plus 2. And come on, we can continue our string. We can say value B is equal to a curly bracket 2 plus 3. And now the report knows, okay, for value B, we're going to be calculating this value here. And so we can check that again. We see it's okay. We can preview it, and we'll see that value A is equal to 3, and value B is equal to 5. One thing to know about these text expressions here are you cannot do nested text expressions. They won't calculate correctly, and what I mean by that is having curly brackets inside of curly brackets. So if we were to do 1 plus 2 plus a curly bracket 2 plus 3, that expression there won't evaluate, and you can see there we get a syntax error, which just tells us, there's an error with the way that we formatted our expression there. So if we wanted to do something like that, what we'd probably need to do is just use parentheses instead, just as in regular math, how you would do it there. And we should get a value of 8 that comes into there. So yeah, so you should only have one set of curly brackets per value expression, and nested curly brackets won't work for that. So that's just an important thing to remember. So as we discussed too, you can also do multi-line expressions, which is what we showed here. Multi-line expression is just very easy to do. There's really no limit to the number of lines you can do in here, so we can continue to add more text to it. And it's just going to add values onto there for the test. The one thing to keep in mind is the limit is set by whatever your text component is. So if my text component is only allows for 3 levels in here, and I place in here test 1, I'm going to get pretty much what I see on the screen there. And so test 1 will be blocked off there. So to fix those kind of things, we can just rearrange our components, maybe realize we need more space for this component here, and we can just drag that one out. And then that way when we preview it, we'll see that we have our full multi-line expression showing up. So those are the basics of expressions and just using general numbers. And while those are good to know, really what you want to know is how to use information that's available to you from Microvellum, or maybe some variables, because just specifying direct numbers isn't really going to give you very good values or the data that you're looking for. So what we can do after this is we're going to add another component on here. And the dictionary has a couple different options for us. As we can see, we have access to our data sources. We also have access to variables and different system variables. So if we wanted to use the system variable, we could do so, and it usually gives a pretty good indication of what that variable is down here. So for example, maybe I wanted to do page N of M, which will just give me what page number I am of the total number. I can either double click on that one and it'll drop it in. You'll see how that expression here is in curly brackets, so it knows that this is something that needs to be evaluated, which it does in the background and displays. You can also just drag and drop, and what's cool about dragging and dropping is if we double click, it just appends it to the end of, to wherever the cursor was at. But if you drag and drop, it'll actually allow you to place it anywhere in that string value. So you'll see how that does that. And you wouldn't necessarily want to do that for the system variables, but you'll see how that kind of comes into play when you're doing more complex expressions with the data dictionary and the data set. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up one with variables. But before we do that, what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about data bands very briefly. And because we want to bring on a data bank, so we want to start showing data as it relates to some data in the database, or in this case, how it relates to your products in your work order. So before I start changing that one here, I'm going to delete these and we'll start fresh. And so I'm going to add a data band onto here. And just the first button here, you can see is all the bands. As we come in here, we can select the data band. The data band is the core component to the report designer. Without a data band, you won't be able to bring in any data. Whenever you place a data band, it'll come up and it'll ask you a couple of things that you can set right away. On the right-hand side here, you can see that you have the dictionary, the relationship, master component, sort, and filters. Today, we're just going to focus on the data source so we get a very firm understanding of what a data band actually does. And once we understand what a data band does and how we can display different information, when we create a master detail report, we'll be able to start setting up relationships and master components and showing the data there. So for the data source, I'm going to set it to my products table, and I'm just going to hit OK. So data band, sometimes there's some confusion about a data band, and not everybody understands exactly what a data band does. And I found the simplest way of explaining a data band is that it's essentially doing a loop. It's looping through whatever data source you select. So it's saying for each, sorry, let me take a step back. So before we go into that, so we have a database. A database contains data tables, which are these here. So our products is a data table. And inside of our products or our data tables, we have rows. And each row contains a set of information as it relates to the columns, the column headers. So I can see this row has information for anchor type, angle, the depth of the cabinet or the product, the whatever the draw index is, which is more of a programming thing. We have height, item number, etc. So as far as the products table relates to it, each row is a product. And when you place a data band on there, essentially what it's doing is it's doing a loop. So we're saying for each row that exists in our products data source, we're going to do something. And that something, how you tell it what that something is what that you want to do, is what exists on this transparent blue area. Anything that's on this transparent blue area will evaluate per row in that data source. So for example, if I drop on just a normal text component here, and I say this is a product, what we're going to see, or what we should see, is we should have product printed out 6 times. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so the reason why it printed out product 6 times was because by using a data band and placing a text expression on here of product, I told Report Designer that for each row that exists in my data source products, and we saw that in our data source products, we had 6 rows, print out this text expression of product. And so that's how I got my 6 products printed out, or my 6 product statements printed out. So with that, what we can also do is we can start using things from our dictionary, or we can also use options from our variables if we had some variables set. So before we get into using data fields from our data set, I just want to go over quickly how you can use a variable. And before I do that, I'm going to change my report here. So I'm going to go to this drop down. I'm going to select my main report option. And I'm going to change my script language from C# to VB, just because I'm comfortable programming or writing statements in Visual Basic. We're not going to be doing it in-depth coding or anything like that. It's just writing some simple expressions that have a little bit different syntax whether you're doing Visual Basic or C#. So we're just going to do Visual Basic here, and then I'm going to come back to my data band and my dictionary, and I'm just going to create a variable because let's say I want a counter. Every time for every product that comes out, I want to count what number row that is in my data set. So I'm going to make a new variable, and the variable name that I'm going to give it is just I'm going to call it a var product counter. And the alias, we could change the alias if we wanted to. I'm just going to leave it the same there because I'm not really going to be displaying the name of it. I'm just going to be using it on my data band there. And we can say that this type is going to be, we'll say this is going to be a double, which is just a number format. And we'll initiate it by value, and our value will just be 1 here. Or actually, we'll leave our value at 0 for now. So now if I put this product counter on here, and I preview it, what we're probably going to get is just 6 zeros in a row. And that's exactly right, because we have a variable, but we haven't told the report designer how to use this variable. So what we have to do is we have to write an expression that'll tell the report designer what that variable needs to be. And one way you can do that is by using some of the properties of a data band. So if I select my data band here, and I go to my properties, I'm going to see at the top here I have my A through Z. And these are all properties of the data band as far as how the data band reacts and how it looks, different information like that. There's also this little lightning bolt next to it, which are events. And the events just tell the data band to run an expression or do something at a certain point of when that data is being calculated. So we're going to do more often than not, you're going to be using a before print event. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to tell this to do something simple. So I'm going to hit these 3 little dots. And we'll see there that we have that same little text editor that we had when we were doing a text expression. And I can just give it something simple. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say my variable is going to be plus equals 1. And what that's going to do is every time it runs through it, I should probably put my variable name in here. So let's grab this variable, and I'm just going to drop it at the beginning. So essentially what I'm telling Report Designer here is every time when you get to a new row, add 1 to the variable product counter. And so it's going to do this every single time. So the first time it runs through, my product counter is going to have a value of 1 because it's going to add 1 to 0. The second time it runs through, my value will be 2 because it's adding 1 to 1, and so on and so forth. So if we hit OK there, you can see here I have a little tag before print, lets me know that there's an event because you're not always looking directly at the events. So sometimes you don't notice there's one on there. But now if I preview this, what I'll be getting is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there I can see I have 6 rows in my data band or in my database because that's what it's counting out. So now we'll go back to page 1. So you can see how you can use a variable there. And it's very simple to set up. It's just knowing exactly, sometimes it's just about knowing where you can put this information in. And obviously this is a simple example of how you can use a variable to store a certain amount of data. But you can also use these variables with different dictionary items as well. As we saw in here, we also have the data set available too. So now that we have that, hopefully we're starting to understand here how these data bands work, how it's looping through the table that we specify, the data source products. And for each row, it's doing whatever is specified in this transparent blue area. So once we do that, we can start moving on to using different data fields. And so to use data fields, there's a couple ways we can do it. We can continue the same method that we've been doing, where we draw on a text component in a certain particular area. So maybe we want to draw one here, and we can bring in data from our dictionary. We can say, okay, we're going to bring in our products information, and from our product, maybe the first thing that we want to know is this product's item number. So we can double click on that, and that'll bring in the product's item number. Hit OK there. So now we know, since we know how a data band works and what a data band does. I dragged that off to the wrong side. Bring that back on here. Okay. So we know a data band's going to go through each row that's in the database, and it's going to print out whatever information, or it's going to do whatever's on the light blue area. If I bring the product's item number on this, then what I should expect is that for each row, I'm going to now see the item number of the product plus that counter that I added in there as the variable. And so there I can see I have 101, 102, 101, 102, 101, 102. If I wanted to verify that data, I can come in here, say, let me view my data, go over to the column called item number, and I can see 101, 102, 101, 102, 101, 102. So those all match there for the 6 products that I have. But that's kind of out of order. So there are a couple things you can do to change the order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on the data band here. And we'll see that we have our data source again that we can select and set the products. As I said, relationship master component we'll be talking about in the future when we do a master detail report. But we can set up a sort option. And in our sort options, we can specify how we want to sort this information. So we saw that our item numbers were out of order. And it's probably easier to read if our item numbers were in order. So we can set up some sorting and we can specify and say, okay, how do we want to sort this? We can say we want to sort it by the products and we want to sort it by the item number. So you can see we're using the same kind of dictionary style that we were using to place the information onto the data band. So we'll sort it by our products and our item number, and then we could choose the order that we want to set to sort it in, either ascending or descending. I'm just going to leave it at ascending. You also have the option for sorting to set it as an expression if you wanted to make a more complicated sorting type of expression as well. But for sorting purposes, that doesn't happen too often here. So usually I would just use this drop down, select the column that you want to sort by, and then set the sorting direction. So if we do that, and now we preview this information, we're going to see that now we're sorted 101, 101, 101, 102, 102, 102. And if I view my data here, I can see I still have my 6. And yes, I had duplicates in here, 101, 101, 101. So I have 3 of each showing up. And, I can see here that my room name, I have break room, MEW, counter, and office. So maybe I want to be able to show some more information on here so that I know exactly, what these products are. Obviously, I think one of the most common things you'd want to be able to see is your product's name. So a couple things you can do here. We can choose to drop on a new text component. With a new text component, we get our text editor, so we can set up our expression, and we can come to the dictionary. We can choose our products, and we can choose our room name. Or, sorry, we wanted our product name, not our room name. So I'm just going to go back in there. I'll delete this one, and we'll go to our dictionary, products, name. So if we do that, what we're going to see now is we're going to have our 101 with our one-door base. 101 is a one-door base. 101 is one-door base. So now we have a little bit more information about these products. We don't know exactly, exactly what this product belongs to, where it is. We need more details about it. Before we move on to adding the room name, there's also another option that we can do here. As we talked about multi-line expressions or adding multiple expressions, we could come to one that we already have on here and say, okay, we always want the product item number to be tied to the product name. So we could say maybe we want that, maybe we want to add a space in between it, and we can just on that same component bring in our product's name. And so now we'll know we'll get our product item number and our name. Maybe there's another string formatting, maybe we want a dash in between there. We can check that, see that that's an okay expression to have. It's okay because these aren't nested inside of each other. They're just individual expressions in the component. And now when we do that, we'll see that we get our 101 one-door base, and it doesn't matter where I move this component, that will always move together. One downside of that might happen, depends if you consider it a downside or not, is any formatting that you now do to this, it's going to do the formatting to the item number and the product name together, so you can no longer format these individually, which might not be a problem depending on the type of report you want to configure. And if you wanted to do some formatting, we can come up here and we can specify, different text styles, different sizes. Maybe we want our item numbers to be a little bit bigger so that they stand out, our item number and our product name. And we'll just put that up there. So now if we preview it, we'll see our item number is a little bit bigger than what our counter was. So if we wanted to place in a few more pieces of information, we could add on another component. But there's also another way of doing it that is a little more streamlined, a little bit faster way of doing it as well. We can also just come over here to the dictionary, because as we saw when we were in the text expression editor, we were able to drag and drop into the expression. We can do the same thing here directly from the dictionary. We can drag and drop items that are in the dictionary directly onto our report, and it'll create a text component for us with that expression in there. So if I wanted to bring on the room name, because the room name is important to see exactly where these belong to, I can drag and drop, and I can say, there's my room name with the text component. If I were to double click on it, you'd see we get the same text expression editor. There's our same expression with the curly brackets on there. Just makes it a lot more streamlined, helps speed up the report development process. So now if we preview it, what we're going to see is we have our 101s with the different rooms. We have our MAW counter, our office break room, MAW counter. And so with that, we might see that maybe there's a different sorting order that we want. Maybe we don't want to just sort by our item number because we see our rooms are all mixed up. So what we can do is we can go back into our data band by double clicking on the header. We can go to our sort options, and we can see that we have a then option. So maybe we want to say, I want to sort by the product's room name, and I want it in ascending order, but I want this to happen before I sort by my item number. So I can use these arrows here to quickly rearrange the order of my sort options. And so now when we get that, we'll see we have all of our break rooms together, all of our MAW counters, and all of our offices together. There are several built-in functions that are available to you from Stimulsoft. You may end up using them, you may not, but I just want to cover a few of them just so we can see exactly how they work as far as bringing in data. So we're just going to drop in a basic text expression, and let me see. So let's make this a little bit bigger here. And actually, we'll use our item number and our product's name. I think that'll be a better option. So if we look at the dictionary again, we've seen the data set, the data table, and all the different columns that we can use to bring in data. We've seen our variables, how we can set a variable value and display that variable on an expression as well. We saw our system variables and how the different system variables are. We have page N of M, different line options, just a lot of them that you can use there. So what I wanted to look at here a little bit was the functions. And there's a lot of different functions that you can use. What we're going to talk about today are just some of the basic built-in functions such as trim, to upper, maybe the length, and some of the different math options that are available. So if we go down to our string options, or our string functions, we can see that we have an option for trim. And the way trim is going to work is you specify the string that you want, and it just takes away any white spaces that might be at the end of your string. So if I place this trim here, we'll see that because we have curly brackets here, right, we need to display information on the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see that I have my product item and my name here. So I'm just going to go back to my dictionary real quick. I'm going to say, okay, I want my item number to be in the middle here in my trim statement. You'll notice that there's no curly brackets here. And I'll place that, and then I want my product's name. And so maybe at the end of this, I've put, 10 spaces or so. Whoops, made a mistake there somewhere. Maybe we can't have multiples in here. Is that what it is? Yeah, so we can't have multiples. So what I would need to be is something like this then instead. So let's say we have a couple spaces in here. So that should be good. And so essentially what that'll do, so we added a few spaces to the end here. with a dash. So what we should get is our item number with a couple spaces and then the name. But what we should have now, if we preview it, we should still have the same format where it actually takes away those spaces there, because that's what the trim function will do, is it'll remove those spaces from any trailing options there. There are a couple other functions that are pretty good to be familiar with, and they are the two upper and the two lower. More specifically, the two lower. So what we can do here, so let's say if we're bringing in our products.name, so you can also type expressions as you see I'm doing here. It's because I'm a little familiar with the data set and the dictionary, so I know exactly what data I'm getting into. So I tend to type usually. But we can drag on here and we can say, okay, maybe our name, what do we want to do with this? Well, if we do a dot after it, we can say we want to do this two upper. If we preview that, what we should get is we should get our name all capital there. Yeah, so we have our two-door base, two-door base, two-door base. With that same concept, if I were to do two lower, and we preview that, you'll see that it brings everything that was in that name in a two lower format. And the reason why I say they're good to be familiar with is whenever we start setting up different filters to filter out specific data, sometimes you'll find that it's easier to filter things if you convert everything to lowercase first, because then you don't have to worry about matching your cases of your characters exactly, especially if you're using an expression filter. And I could probably go in there and I can show you how to do that here. Let me see what product names we have. We have door base, door base, door base, door base, door base, two door, one, two. So it'll be a little hard to do filter here because they're all pretty much named the same. But we can do something, let's see, we can do something with the break room. Yeah, we'll do that. So, so that's a two upper and two lower. And so I'll show you, now that you saw exactly what that does to the actual data dictionary itself, I'll show you how we can set up a filter that will allow us to use that two lower to know we have a solid filter that won't, break on us or anything like that. So as far as filters go, there are also part of a data band, and the filter just kind of modifies a little bit how it loops through the different tables. So, as we were talking about earlier, a data band essentially says for each row that is in our products data source or our products data table, do what is on this transparent blue area. If we had a filter, then what it would say is for every row that's in the products table and meets a certain condition, then do what's on this blue transparent area. And so the filter that I'm going to set up here, we'll just double click on the data band, go down to the filters. The filter that I'm going to set up here is going to be a filter for the room name. So there's a couple ways we can do it. We can use the standard filter that's available to us from Stimulsoft, or from Report Designer, and they're very easy to set up. There are a lot of little drop-down menus, and for most generic purposes, they'll work just fine. So we can go to products, we can say, okay, where our room name, and we say is equal to break room. And if we have that filter set up and we preview the report, what we're going to see is now we only have our products that are available to us from the break room. So obviously you can use that filter for a lot of things. You can use it for dimensions if you wanted to, for the rooms, for the locations. If you have multiple projects in there, maybe you want to filter out just a specific project. Maybe you want to filter out specific types of cabinets. All mine here were one door and two door bases. So setting up a product filter is a little bit more difficult. But in your projects, you'll probably have uppers, bases, talls, corners, a whole variety of different cabinets. So you can set up those filters for a specific type of report. So we'll go back to page 1. We'll go back in here into the filters. In the same method of being able to use a drop-down menu to set up a filter, similar to what the sorting is, you can also change your field is value to expression, and it'll let you type an expression in here. If you wanted to type an expression, you can come to this f of x button, and that'll open up the text editor for your expression. And as we've seen with all the other text editors, we have our dictionaries, and then we're just typing in a basic expression. So we could say that we want to filter. So these are inclusive filters, not exclusive, which means that if it needs to meet the condition that's there in order to come through. Otherwise, it won't. So what we can do here is we can use, let's say we want to filter something based off of our room name. So we have our product's room name. And then we want to say where our product's room name maybe is just the break room, right? So we could say something like our product's room name dot to lower. So what I'm doing here is I'm converting the room name to lower is equal to break room. Oh, and I'm going to do all lowercase here, break room. And so now we'll see we just have a simple expression there. It's going to do pretty much the same thing as the stimulus, as the drop-down filters that were there. But I want to make you familiar with how you can write expressions and filters, because as you develop more complex reports, such as like master detail reports and whatnot, you might find that using the default drop-down filters don't give you exactly what you want. Sometimes just being able to write a filter as an expression will help out quite a bit as well. So error, so what did I do? So break room is not declared. So it's looking for break room somewhere, and it's probably because I'm trying to compare a string, and I didn't put that in quotes here, so it doesn't know that it's a string value. It's trying to evaluate that as a field. So now if I preview it here, so we'll see there, we still get the same one door base, two door base for just our break rooms. Let me check a couple questions here. Let me see, make sure I'm not missing anything. No, not too many questions there. Again, if you do have any questions about this from going too fast, you want me to cover something again, feel free to ask there. I'm more than happy to stop or backtrack a little bit to help clarify things, to help you guys be able to develop reports on your own and be successful at it as well. So we talked about filters there. Another way that you can write a filter expression. So remember that filter expression there, products.roomName.toLower equals to some string value. And because we're writing an expression here, that string value needs to be in quotes. That way the system knows that this is just a basic string or a string literal value that we're trying to compare to. Another way you can write an expression is using a contains option. So what we'll do is, we'll close this editor. We'll come back into here. So if we go back to value, we can see here that there's also a couple different options. We have equal to, not equal to, containing, not containing, beginning with, ending with, is null, is not null. So another common one to do is to use the containing. And what the containing is going to do is it's going to find, so it's going to go through each one of those rows. It's going to find the value that you set. So here I have room name, and it's going to say any of my room names that contain a certain string value. So it doesn't have to match the entire string, but if it contains if the room name contains a portion of that room name contains a certain value, then it'll accept it in. So for example, if I do, instead of break room, I just do room, what I'll be getting here is anything that contains room in my room name will be allowed through. So there, if I preview it now, my break room still comes through. And if I wanted to verify my data, I could go to view data and go over to my room names column and say, okay, yep, I can see here I have office, countertop, room, and break room's the only one with the room in there. In that same method, just to simplify this and see exactly how that works, I could say anything that contains an O in my room name. I hit OK there, and I preview it. Then we see everything comes through because all of them contain an O in their name. In that same method, we can use an expression instead of using the drop downs, which allows for a little bit more configuration, for more complex filtering as well. Again, you'll probably be using the drop downs more often than not, but if you come up on a complex report, you might end up using an expression here. So if we go to an expression, we can write that same expression that we had. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do our products table, our room name. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to lower first. I like to use the to lower because then I know that everything in there is lowercase. I don't have to worry about matching my case for my string when I input it here. I just put it all lowercase and it's good. It's a really solid practice of having it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do dot contains. And so the contains is a little bit different than what we saw with just the regular to lower. The contains is more of a method. And so methods usually require an input. And so you put that input in between parentheses here. So I can say contains O. Oop, it's a P, it's not an O. Contains O. So that's another way of writing an expression if you're using your dot contains. And if we hit OK here and we preview it, we'll see we should get the same results where we have our break room, a mid-W counter, office, and our office. In the same manner, if we change that so it's not just a no, because that's not very realistic, maybe we just want to see things that have room in them. Let me preview it. We should just get our break rooms here. So there's multiple ways of doing filters. A lot of it depends on how comfortable you are or how experienced you are with writing expressions versus just using the UI. And both, with enough practice, obviously will become pretty intuitive for you to do. And you'll find what you like better versus another one here. So here you go. So we got a question in here. Is there a way to pull just one instance of data that's repeated between products, i.e. pull a list of rooms, but only report each room name once? There is a way of doing that, and that's using a different type of band called a group header band. We aren't going to talk about that one today, because in order to use a group header band, you need to have a firm understanding of how to use expressions. So today I wanted to cover expressions. That way everybody understands how expressions work, how these expressions interact with the report. That way whenever we go through a group header band and we set up the group header band's condition and we're using the expression, it's easy to understand and easy to follow there. So stay tuned for that live event, because that one should be in a few weeks here, I believe. All right, so there we have our filter there, room. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off this filter here. We'll remove that filter, and we'll just show all of our data again here. The last type of expressions that I wanted to go over here are conditional expressions. And conditional expressions are expressions that are evaluated, and based on how something evaluates, it decides what to do. So for example here, let's see. So let's go to page 1. And we're going to use the product's name to create an expression. Let me minimize that here. So I'm going to drop on a new text component. And we'll just increase that here. So those are the different string formatting. So the expressions we're going to be talking about now are the programming shortcuts. You saw there's a bunch of different other functions in here, like there's math functions that if you wanted to do different math functions, you can do so. But usually you'll be using the strings and the programming shortcuts, because a lot of the number values you're getting are being pulled in by the processing station, or are in your work order because the processing station calculated those. So you don't necessarily want to be going in and changing values on a report, because you want to make sure that the report that goes out to your nesting machine or your sawing machine is accurate. So usually those values, numeric values, will just stay with what they're at there. But programming shortcuts are a good way of making decisions and changing the way you display data. So maybe I want to change, so I'm going to use an if statement here. It's probably the most common one. If you look at some of the default reports in Report Designer, you'll see that we have if statements pretty much all over, based on whether something is scrap or not, based on a whole bunch of different options. And essentially what it's doing is it's making a decision. It's saying, as you can see here, there's a condition, a true part, and a false part. So it's saying returns one of the two parts depending on the evaluation of the expression. So if my condition returns true, then it returns whatever's in my true part. if my condition returns false, then it returns whatever's in my false part. So for this one, I could say, I can make an expression here. I can say if, and what I'm going to do here is I want to see how many doors I have. If I have 2 doors on my product, or if I have 2 doors in my product name, then I want it to tell me that I have 2 doors. Otherwise, I want it to tell me I just have 1 door. It's a very basic expression to do. Might not be something you do, but it'll help you understand how those expressions are working, how they're evaluating. That way, as you guys have your ideas and you start thinking about ways of using this, you'll understand the concept there. So what we'll do is we use our product name, and since our product name is 1 door base or 2 door base, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my product name. So I'm going to click on that product name, drag it in here. So I'm going to say if my product name is what? So I'm going to use the same way I kind of did the filter. So I'm going to say if my product name to lower dot contains, and then in the string, I'm going to say if it contains 1 door in the name, right? Because it's a 1 door base or 2 door base. If it contains 1 door in the name, then I'm going to say I have 1 door. Otherwise, what am I going to say? I have 2 doors. And maybe I don't know, because it could be maybe it's a 4-door cabinet for some reason. But just like, again, just an example here so we can see how this expression is being evaluated. So if we hit OK there, and actually before I do that, let me check this, make sure it's good. 1, 2, 3, 4. That should be fine. So if I preview this here, so now I'll see my product's name did contain 1 door base. So it said I have 1 door. My product's name didn't contain 1 door base. So it said I have 2 doors, et cetera, on and on and on and on there. So that's how those if statements can be used to evaluate an expression and display different types of value in that same component. If statements can also have multiple, they can have nested if statements. It can get kind of complicated to follow sometimes, so you have to be careful exactly when you're doing it. But let's say we wanted to calculate here and say, if my product's name .toLower contains one door, then I have 1 door. Otherwise, maybe we want to do another expression. We can drag our if statement here, say, okay, otherwise, if our product name .toLower contains 2 door, then what I want to do, I have 2 doors. Otherwise, so if the otherwise here is going to say, well, it doesn't contain 1 door, doesn't contain 2 doors. So I'm going to say, I don't know how many doors I have. So when we preview that now, we'll see we get the same type of results, and actually all of mine have 1 door, 2 door. So I'm not going to get that last one on there, but let's just change it just to see. So let's do contains. Let's say maybe we messed up this equation here. We did the wrong thing. Maybe we did 2 door without a space in there. And we preview it. We'll see. Okay, 1 door. I don't know how many doors I have. So maybe by this we know that there's some kind of problem in here. Like we could say, well, you should know how many doors I have because I know I programmed that statement in there to look if it was a 2 door. So I can go in here and I can see and change that to something else. But essentially, that's how you can do nested if statements. They can get kind of complicated and kind of long depending on how many things you want to evaluate in one expression there. But they become very useful, especially when you're trying to do more complex data formatting. So, see any other questions here? Yeah, you could use a switch statement. You could use a select statement. There's a bunch of different ones. Just kind of depends what you're comfortable with. Yeah, it just kind of depends what you're comfortable with. So there's a bunch of different ones. One thing you'll notice about Report Designer is, there's a lot of ways to do the same thing. And I definitely don't want to overwhelm everybody with too much stuff. So I just wanted to give you some of the basic things that are being used. That way you can start developing some reports and everything. if you were following along today and doing this on your own side, I would suggest saving this report because in the next report class, we're going to be talking about another couple components of bands called data bands, or sorry, just talk about data bands. We're going to be talking about group header bands. It's all going to be focused on bands. So group header bands, we're talking about page headers, report headers, column header bands. And those are really what start to change the look of your report quite a bit. It starts to combine data down into, it compresses data based on group header bands and whatnot. It's very exciting lesson, I think. And it all builds off of knowing how to write expressions, or how expressions at least are evaluated in the report designer. So that's all I have for you there. One more thing here before I give it back to Clay here. We have been going through and updating some documentation for the reports, report information. So if you log into the Help Center and you browse down to the knowledge base articles, in the reports and labels section, you're going to see there's a new category called Report Internals Expressions. So if we go in there, we'll see that there's 19 articles, and these, thought it said 19 articles, might have been a mistake in there. Well, there's a few articles in here, and a lot of this is going to be what we covered today, text expressions, multi-line expressions, conditional expressions. So all that information is written down, as well as obviously the recorded live event. That information will be there to allow you to refer back to it if you need to as time goes on. So that's all I had. So I'll pass it back to you, Clay.
All right. Thanks, Lucas. And to those who attended today, Lucas, just a comment on that. If you refresh your screen there, you should see, just refresh there and go back actually. Reports and labels, that category. You see that there's a few more sections in here. Should be. So we've split them out.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah, so there used to be 19, but we've actually been adding more. So now we split it out into conditional formatting, the appearance, and then expression. So we are adding to that as we speak, but quite frequently. And over the next couple of weeks, you'll start to see a lot more there related to reports. So just wanted to help you with that. All right, let me get things switched back over here. All right, so again, thanks to everyone who attended, and a special thanks and shout out to those who attended from Australia and New Zealand this morning. It's awful early there. It's right now it's currently 5 o'clock a.m. in Sydney, and that's awful early, and we definitely appreciate you taking the time to get up early and be here for this event, so that's great. If you want to learn more about expressions, like we mentioned, you can go to that Help Center knowledge base article, and there you'll find a bunch of articles based off of what you saw today. As a reminder, our version 15.5 beta 2 was made available yesterday, and to sign up for it, you can visit our Help Center in the announcement section and check out the beta 2 post. Okay, so also last week we introduced a new live topic, actually a live support hour we called it. The announcement for that event went out a little last minute due to a cancellation of a previously scheduled event. So if you received the notice and the event was already happening, we apologize for that, but this event was recorded and posted on our Help Center. So you can look at that in the live event category there on the knowledge base. You can read through the transcript and even watch the video where we answered several of those questions we received from attendees live. If you missed it last week and want to attend again, we are planning on having an encore event next week, and due to the popularity of the inquiries that we received afterwards related to this topic, we plan on having more live support on a regular basis. We're thinking of a monthly basis there. So be prepared, get your questions ready, and we'll be ready to help with another live support hour next week. And registration for that will be available later today. Let's see here. And again, as you exit today, don't forget to take the exit survey. Your feedback helps us improve these events, so let us know how we did. Looks like there may be a few other questions coming in here, so we'll keep the questions piece of this webinar going, but that will conclude today for the live presentation. So I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you on our next Microvellum Live event.